So they actually done it. They done the golfing scene. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video, and I've got something a little bit different. In today's video, we'll be talking about episode 1 and episode 2 of The Last of Us Season 2. Now, as someone who absolutely adores both games and Season 1, as someone who has a tattoo of The Last of Us, my background is covered with Last of Us stuff, I have a lot of things to say about specifically episode 2, of course. It is only right that we do discuss the opening episode of the new season. And of course, before this review gets underway, let me know what you thought of episode 1 and 2 in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, because ultimately, episode 2 might be the greatest episode of television I've ever watched. So ultimately, let's talk about episode 1. So obviously, with episode 1, it does take a 5-year time jump. I mean, we have Joel being 61 years old, we have Ellie being roughly 19 and 20, and we're also being introduced to more side characters from Jackson, of course, that are in the video game. Of course, we have Isabel Merced as Dina, we have Jesse, we have obviously older Tommy, and of course, we have Tommy's son, as Uncle Joel has been named in this series as well. So we see Joel as a more kind of leader in Jackson now, as he takes more of the kind of construction site kind of thing, which is really interesting to me. I think the fact that he's getting a sort of construction role is very interesting. And of course, we have how ultimately how Jackson is functioning in this new sort of era of this more really harsh winter. I mean, there's a load of workers. There's obviously too many people actually in Jackson, as Maria states to Joel in the sort of construction scene, that there is too many people and not enough houses for them to live in. So of course, when it comes to this in season 2, it is interesting to see what sort of vibe we get from Pedro Pascal as Joel, because it is very, very obvious, we all knew from the video game, that the episode 2 scene with the golfing scene, of course, was bound to happen at some point. So it was interesting to see that pretty much episode 1 revolved around Pedro Pascal as Joel. I mean, it was literally a 50-50 split between him and Ellie. I mean, we didn't really see them interact once, which is very similar to the game, and it is very, very interesting because, of course, this season has gotten a load of controversy, specifically, of course, as you know, the casting as Bella Ramsey as Ellie. Now, of course, obviously, if Kaylee Spaney was Ellie, I'm sure everyone would have no issue with that, but I gotta admit, as much as I do not think Bella Ramsey looks like Ellie, I mean, they just don't look alike. However, I think Bella Ramsey as an actress is easily one of the best actresses out there when it comes to portraying Ellie. In episode 1, she does portray Ellie in a really nice way. I think, for example, the best scene I think Bella Ramsey has in episode 1 is the scene with Dina that's ripped straight out of the games. Of course, the ballroom dance scene, if you want to call it a ballroom, but you know, that dance scene, and in my opinion, it's ripped straight out of the game, but I think Bella Ramsey does a really good job in that scene. I mean, even the line of, her telling Dina that every guy is looking at her right now, and obviously end up kissing and all that sort of thing. So I think Bella Ramsey and Isabel Merced has that chemistry. They do really work well off each other. It's going to be intriguing to see how they portray that chemistry in the future episodes after episode 2. So in my opinion, I think episode 1 is a really strong episode, but I can see why people were a bit annoyed with it. Because, of course, episode 1 is a slow burner. It's a fairly slow episode. Not much technically happens, but we do get the vibe of Joel. We have a new perspective on Joel. For example, he is now seeing Catherine O'Hara's character as this therapist, and obviously the wife of Eugene. And Eugene we'll talk about in a bit. But with these therapy sessions, it's really, really interesting because we see this sort of vulnerability in Joel. And in season 1 and in the first game, Joel is this hard ass. He is hard. Nothing can get to him. I mean, even after Tess dies, nothing actually really bothers him, other than obviously the hospital scene with Ellie. That's the first thing that kind of clocks with him emotionally. So when it comes to this season, all of a sudden Joel being this vulnerable man, it is really, really interesting to see that big switch in character from Pedro Pascal as Joel. And I think that this therapy scene is excellent. I think it's really, really well acted between Catherine O'Hara and obviously Pedro Pascal. I think the shots they use as well with the real close-up of Catherine O'Hara's character, because obviously it is revealed that Catherine O'Hara plays the wife of Eugene. Now, Eugene seems to be a really, really important character in this season, who was sidelined in the games. Eugene doesn't really show up in the games, if at all, to my knowledge. So, for me, I think it's really, really interesting that we're probably going to get the filler episode in this season. Of course, we had the episode with Bill in the first season. So, with the second season, it looks like this episode is going to be about Eugene. So, it is intriguing to see that, because I'm pretty sure, after episode 2 for sure, that Pedro Pascal, obviously Joel, has killed Eugene on purpose. Now, it is very much implied that, Joel had to kill Eugene, because not only in episode 1 we see Catherine O'Hara as the therapist say, we also see in episode 2 Jesse mention, like, oh, it's annoying that Joel had to do what he did. Now, obviously, it's implying that Eugene was bit. Now, I am going to be dead real with you. If there's anything to go by, Eugene definitely was not bitten. He was not bitten. That's a story Ellie and Joel have made up to tell everybody. Because with the therapy session in episode 1, Joel is very much holding back something in that therapy session. There is something he is not telling Catherine O'Hara's character, which would make sense, because if he purposely killed her husband when she implies that she only knows that, oh, you had to kill him, if she finds out that he's lying the whole time, of course, loads of stuff's going to happen. So I think the most logical answer is Eugene finds out about Ellie's immunity. That seems to be like the kind of common theory that this episode is going to be about. So when it comes to this episode and Eugene, that's probably what's going to happen. However, with episode 1, I think it's a really, really solid episode. Yes, it's a bit slow, and I saw a lot of people get pissed because of the fact that we waited like 2 years for this episode, and that's what we got. However, when it comes to episode 2, oh, were those prayers answered, because this is the best episode of television I think I've ever seen. However, there's one very big character who I have not mentioned yet before we go on to episode 2, and that's Abby. The whole episode opens up with basically a recap of the end of season 1, and then we get this scene with Abby, with her group burying the rest of the Fireflies, which is really intriguing, by the way, because it seems to me that this season is explaining everything about Abby in the first few episodes. Rather, in the game, we get that way, way later on. For example, we get the scene of Abby going in to see her dad's basically dead body after Joel with the hospital, because if you did not know, Abby's dad is a doctor that was supposed to, operate on Ellie. But, of course, we see that basically in the first few episodes, and we get this scene where Abby is talking to herself, basically, don't go in there, don't go in there, and I feel like Kaitlyn Dever as Abby, again, a lot of people saying, oh, she doesn't look like Abby. Whatever. Kaitlyn Dever is going to be absolutely incredible as Abby. And we only got a taste of that in episode 2, which we'll get onto in a bit. But Kaitlyn Dever as Abby, in my opinion, is a really good casting, because she's an excellent actress. And so when we get to see her as more, aggressive Abby, like in episode 2, I think it's going to be really, really scary. But when it comes to episode 1 introducing Abby, it is really intriguing, because it then ends the episode with Abby and Owen finding Jackson. So it kind of gives you, for those who have played the games, it kind of gives you that little like, oh no, they're going to do it. That at the end of episode 1. That's what I got anyway. Because when I saw that episode, I was like, oh my god, they're going to do golfing in episode 2, aren't they? They're going to do it. Oh no. So, of course, going on to episode 2, easily the best episode of television I've ever watched. I've stated, I think 3-4 times at the moment now. But when it comes to this episode, I think this is really intriguing, because we get some of the most entertaining pieces of the second game. Because, of course, we get the whole scene of Ellie going out with Jesse, whatever. That is another switch from the game, by the way, because they end up finding Eugene's weed plant. That in the game is obviously Dina and Ellie that find that, and they get their whole more or less confirming that they're almost a couple scene, basically. So when it comes to this, they've changed a lot of like minimal things from the game. When it comes to who's with who in certain moments. So when it comes to obviously I'll get to the scene at the end, but we get Abby obviously going through, because they're trying to look for a patrol from Jackson to kind of ambush. They're going to see if Joel's there. That's their plan. They're going to ambush a patrol and hopefully find out that they can torture them or whatever to kind of get something out of them to find out where Joel is. That's the plan. Now, Abby's group is very much not keen on this job. I think it's similar enough in the game that like Abby's group are not too keen on they don't believe they're going to find Joel. They don't. But deep down, Abby knows that they will find him. I mean, Abby literally is so determined so much that she goes on her own. She goes on her own like she does in the game. She goes on her own and ends up finding this mountain. Now, she has to climb down this mountain in a safe way, right? No, she ends up tumbling down the mountain, and we get some of the coolest bits of practical effects, in my opinion, when it comes to this show. The practical effects in episode 2, episode 1, the whole of season 1 are absolutely incredible. But going on to some more, going on about the practical effects in this show, we get the frozen horde. Now, this scene is absolutely horrifying, I think. Because when we get this scene, we get Abby seeing this frozen clicker in the ground. The head is just sticking up, looking directly at her. Now, to me, that is horrifying, but then we find out that this horde have been using their bodies to stay warm and alive. Because initially, these look dead. They look dead, completely buried under the snow. However, all of a sudden we hear a rumble, and Abby decides to run away, and all of a sudden the horde start rushing out at her. They start rushing and rushing and rushing, and we get the infamous scene in the game of Abby kind of crawling through that kind of wired fence, which is easily one of the most entertaining pieces of the game, in my opinion, to play, and I love that scene. So when we get that scene, it's awesome. But then again, Abby's crawling through this fence, and as the fence is being, crashed in by the horde, it slowly starts breaking down and down and down, and her entry of exit is basically getting smaller and smaller. She has to crawl. Eventually, the infected are kind of grabbing at her. There's one shot of an infected's hand, and the wire, not the barbed wire, is cutting away at their hand even to try get at her. So that's really, really cool details. And eventually, this horde is about to get Abby. There's one right in front of her, about to bite her, and then a gunshot goes off right through the infected's head, and a hand comes out to grab her. And of course, it's none other than Joel. Now, this scene, I think we all know what was coming after this. I mean, we all knew. However, instead of it being Tommy with Joel, it's Dina. And to me, that's really, really interesting. Because Dina being with Joel is a completely separate thing. And that means we're going to get a separate perspective, because Tommy doesn't know what happens just yet. So when it comes to this, obviously we get Dina and Joel running away with Abby on the horseback, and these horses are going as fast as they can, and this horde is still coming at them. They're not closing any distance. So Abby obviously does the smart thing in her eyes of saying, oh, we're set up in this kind of lodge, we can go there, and without a choice, of course, Abby decides to take them there, and Joel and Dina oblige, and they go to this mansion or lodge. Basically, it's the lodge as the same as the game, and then the scene cuts, and we go back to Jackson. So everyone knows what's gonna happen if you've played the game. So then all of a sudden we go back to Jackson, and this horde that has been awoken has because of this one thing that happened. So obviously, with Jackson needing more jobs and stuff like that, that was hinted at in this first episode, by the way, they start balling at the pipes. They start hitting the pipes for whatever reason, obviously to get them unfrozen, I'm assuming. However, when this one specific person opens up this pipe, the vines of cordyceps have started to basically go through the pipes, and basically that means that because he hit that, the horde now know where Jackson is. And all of a sudden, we get this shot of all the horde start running towards Jackson. And you just know it's going to be one of those entertaining pieces of media, especially in The Last of Us as well. So, before all this happened, Tommy has this really nice scene with the whole town of Jackson, basically explaining what the patrol or basically plan is if they're ever breached by infected. And the way Gabriel Luna portrays himself as Tommy, I love him as Tommy. I absolutely adore him, because the way he interacts with the town and everything like that's awesome. And as Tommy in this episode, he's excellent, because all of a sudden, when this plan has to come into action, it's really, really quick. So all of a sudden, all the older and younger people have to go rush into basements, and they lock the doors, and they're completely unarmed in those basements. I think there's one or two people max to have arms in there, because obviously most of the guns are needed for the upstairs and on the ground to fight the infected. So, of course, then we have all these people arming themselves, running to the rooftops to basically arm themselves if they're breached. And all this horde you can see is just, honestly, it looks like thousands. It obviously isn't, but it just looks like, that's how many it looks like. And they're all just rushing towards Jackson. And all of a sudden, they start rolling off these They start rolling off these kind of ramps, obviously for the gasoline to happen, and next thing you know, this horde starts to just pound into the side of the walls of Jackson, like absolutely crushing the wall. And as you can see, they're fairly strong. The walls are really, really strong in the Jackson. However, there's one key member of this horde. Of course, it's the bloater. And the bloater, of course, needs to be the strongest of the lot, other than the Rat King. If they do the Rat King, by the way, in this season, oh my god, I will cry. But anyway, regardless, they have these sort of ramps and they end up pushing off the gasoline into the horde. And they kind of wait and wait and wait until they're all kind of piled up and then start shooting the gasoline to kind of, minimize the impact. However, all of a sudden, the horde starts to go to the left. Now, this is really interesting because it shows the horde are getting smarter. The infected are getting a little bit smarter because they start going to the left and breaking into the side of the wall, and the bloater follows. And you can see the pure power of the bloater in this season because in season 1, there was a lot of things people saying there wasn't enough infected, there wasn't enough, and obviously they didn't really show the power of the infected. This episode alone has more infected than season 1, I think. So when it comes to this episode, the bloater, it just shows how powerful it is because literally 2 punches breached the wall of Jackson while a whole horde going against the wall couldn't breach anything. So the literally 2 punches and the infected are in. And we have this full-on war zone going on in Jackson with the infected. People are dying left and right, and there's one little itty-bitty complaint I have about this. Now, this might be really, really picky, but in my opinion, I don't think there's enough gore in this episode when it comes to the infected killing off people at Jackson. You see people get like spear tackled, that's about it. You don't see anyone like getting absolutely destroyed like you did in season 1 with the bloater ripping off that dude's head, who was obviously going after Henry and Sam in that episode. You don't have any of that. It's more or less just people getting tackled and then you just assume, oh, they're dead, yeah, done. So to me, that's a little bit of a really small thing, but still kind of like, oh, I would have wished we got a little bit more Carnage candy, but we don't talk about it. Anyway, but when it comes to that, of course, we have this massive, massive battlefield now, and we have Maria on one rooftop and Tommy's on the ground with his flamethrower. Now, I will be completely honest, a little part of me thought they were going to kill off Tommy in this episode, or Maria, one of them. I thought one of them was going to bite the bullet, because for me, I was like, hold on a minute. It's a bit strange that they're kind of filming this way of almost Maria looking at Tommy in a sort of it's going to be okay way. And emotions in the eyes were really big in this episode. But when it comes to that scene of Maria looking at Tommy on the floor, it almost looked like one of them was kind of saying, like, oh, goodbye, it's going to be okay. That sort of vibe. And I was like, hold on a minute, what's going on here? Next thing you know, the bloater gets breached into, obviously, into Jackson, and that's the main threat. Obviously, the infected are really, really, really dangerous, and they start breaking into the walls of the buildings and stuff. But when it comes to the bloater, Gabriel Luna as Tommy runs this certain way and tries to obviously escape the bloater. And all of a sudden, you get a one-on-one Tommy versus bloater. And Tommy uses all this gasoline on this flamethrower on this bloater. Literally every last drop. And you have this slight feeling, because the bloater just isn't taking damage, just keeps walking and keeps walking. You get this vibe of, is Tommy going to die here? You get the vibe of, oh my god, they're going to kill off Tommy. Oh my god, oh my god. And I don't know why I got that vibe, because realistically it would have changed the whole aspect of the second season in comparison to the game. But regardless, that shows how good the tension and suspense is in this show. Anyway, Tommy is literally toe-to-toe with this bloater, as it literally looks... I was expecting Maria to come across and kill the bloater off as like a savior kind of act. However, Tommy gets so lucky, because as the bloater is about to put the final blow, it just slowly succumbs to the wounds of the flamethrower. Now, I got so worried, but I was like, okay, it's a bit anticlimactic, but I'm happy it happened because they didn't kill off Tommy. And of course, then Tommy walks back into the street, Maria's there, they hug because it shows a wide shot of all these people who obviously killed. You see people who are bitten that have to be put down. Like, it's really, really tragic for like the scene of Jackson. And then we cut back to Joel and Dina with Abby's group. And you just know what was going to happen, because of Caitlin Dever's acting in this scene. Because basically what happens is Joel's on this, walkie-talkie trying to communicate to Jackson. No one's talking back to him, and you can just see out the window Jackson's on fire from the whole breaching. And next thing you know, Abby brings them all in, introduces everyone to the group. That's Owen, everything like that. That's Dina. And then looks at Joel and just goes, and that's Joel. and everybody's face lights up. They're all like, "Oh my god, oh my god!" Like she got Joel, like she got him, and you just know what's coming next because everyone's face is kind of like, "Oh my god!" Like it was that easy. Technically, that's basically how they look. And next thing you know, you can sense because Dina gets kind of like almost in a chokehold, and basically Joel's like wondering what the hell's going on and puts his hands up because then Abby goes on to her monologue and basically instead of obviously being Tommy getting knocked out like he does in the games, they put this sort of like syringe in Dina, knock her out for an hour or whatever it is, and next thing you know, the shotgun comes out, blasts through Pedro Pascal's knee like it does in the game, and you just have this really everyone who's played the game has this vibe of, oh my god, they're gonna do it, and how are they gonna make this worse? There's no way they could make this worse in the game. It's gonna be fine. I'm gonna say this right now, as a absolute lover of The Last of Us, I think the way they done it in the show is more heartbreaking in the game because of the fact of like you've seen it in the game multiple times, but the way they do it in this show is really vicious in my opinion, and it's specifically to do with the ending blow, which I will talk about later. But basically, Abby goes on her monologue, basically explaining, "Oh, Joel Miller, you killed my dad, whatever, whatever." But basically, we get this kind of comparison to episode 1. Because obviously, Captain O'Hara was asking Joel to tell her what he's not telling her. And he refuses. And Abby gives him the same opportunity and asks, "When was the last time you seen the Fireflies?" And you get this sort of vibe of, is he going to tell the truth? And he does. He says Salt Lake, which is, of course, the hospital which Abby or Ellie was being held. And next thing you know, Abby goes, "Okay, yeah, you're being honest. At least you're honest." And Abby stands up with the shotgun, gives the shotgun to Owen, and you get this shot of Caitlin Dever as at like the forefront of the shot, kind of blurry, because in the back you see the golf club set. And they're more emphasis on the golf club. So everyone who's played the game has this Leonardo DiCaprio, that moment, and you get this vibe of, oh my god, how bad is it gonna be? And so basically, Abby goes over to the golf club set, starts talking, doing her monologue again, and then Pedro Pascal and Joel proceed to say, "Shut the F up and just get it over with already." And you get this look in Abby's eyes. Again, emotions being and acting being shown through eye movement and emotion. And you just get the, oh my god, she's going to make it so much worse. You just know it because all of a sudden she grabs the wedge or whatever it is, goes over to Joel, says you can't rush this, and starts beating on his leg. That's different to the game because in the game it goes, "You can't rush this," and then he obviously Abby hits Joel in the head and it cuts away. Instead, Abby starts beating on this dude's open knee wound because obviously it's tourniqueted like it is in the game. It's beaten and beaten and beaten, and then we cut back to Ellie. And Ellie's on the horse on her own. I'm pretty sure, yeah, on her own because Jesse and her kind of dip off because they go north and west or something like that. Ellie goes north anyway and goes towards this because they see the horse tracks that Dina and Joel has left. So Ellie, you know what's happening. Ellie's going up this mountain, goes in the door with the gun. You can just hear the grunts, and at this point in the game, you can hear Joel's grunts, of course. However, in the show, it's actually Abby because basically Ellie goes through the house and opens the door, and you see Abby punching Joel instead of hitting him in the game. And obviously Ellie starts going crazy, tries to shoot him, cuts one of the dudes with the knife that she has, and then gets put in the ground. And you can see the way they done the makeup on Joel. You also see that the golf clubs, like the club of the head of the club has broken off, and it's just a shard. And there's emphasis on that, and you're like, oh my god, no. So basically, all of a sudden, all the group of Abby are basically confused about how Ellie got in, etc., like the game. And then Owen goes over to Abby and says, "End it," like he does in the game. And you just get this vibe, you get the look that Joel has in his face of this beaten, like really, really badly beaten. And then you get the finishing blow. Now, in the game, of course, it's the club to the head, and you get this sound effect. And it's like basically then all of a sudden all the audio goes blurry except for Ellie. In the show, they managed to make it worse because they done this really I think it's really disturbing in my opinion, because basically Joel's looking over and Ellie's telling him to get up, get up, get up, and you get this sort of thing. I don't know if it was in the script or it was improvised. But Pedro Pascal kind of like lifts his head a little bit, like he's trying to get up, and then falls back down. And next thing you know, Abby grabs the shard of the club, and you go, hold on a minute, where's she gonna stick that? Like, where's she gonna stick him, in the chest or like in the back? No. Abby grabs his head, his neck here, and all of a sudden, just in the foreground, you have a little bit of Ellie's head in the shot. You hear this sort of sound. Abby grabs the shard, and you just hear, and you just see the shard of the club in Joel's neck. And to me, that is so much worse in the game, because you just see this sort of sound. Obviously, it all goes blurry, and Bella Ramsey loses it in this scene. Oh my god, the acting of Bella Ramsey really does make this scene so much better, because she goes for it. She loses her shit, because all of a sudden tears are flowing. She's going crazy. I'm going to kill you. She goes all like the lines of the game. And next thing you know, they all leave. They kick Ellie in the stomach like they do in the game, but they don't knock her out like the game. So all of a sudden, they prolong this scene a little bit longer than the game. You see Ellie crawl over to Joel. You see her put her head on his head and tell him to get up. No, 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 like panic. And you just get this shot of Ellie having her head lying on top of his. And it slowly loses it as the music plays. Next thing you know, Dina wakes up beside Ellie, saying it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. Next thing you know, it cuts to black. You get this last shot of Ellie on the horse with basically sitting in front of Jesse, Dina on the other horse. Just all of a sudden, that's all you can see. They're galloping off towards Jackson, but then you see this rope attached to the horse, and then all of a sudden you get this kind of wider shot that pulls wider, and you see this bag, obviously with Joel's body in it, being dragged across the snow. And you get this wide shot, you see that in the foreground, and all of a sudden in the background, you just see Jackson on fire, and that's where the episode ends. Now, the way that episode goes is unbelievable. It's tragic, it's horrific, it's just absolutely excellent cinema, in my opinion. I know it's not cinema, I know it's television, but I don't care. It's one of the greatest episodes of television I've ever seen, if not the greatest. It's up there. I think it's sitting at a 9.5 out of 10 on IMDb or something like that. The highest rated, I'm pretty sure, I've had any episode in the series so far. And it really does show the range Bella Ramsey is going to have in this season, because I think a lot of people were kind of curious to see how she's going to play basically female John Wick. And I think she's going to be okay. After that scene of Joel, I think she is going to be okay, because I think she's excellent in that scene. I really, really do. I think she's really, really good. And the way they done this scene in comparison to the game, I think it's just absolutely tragic. Like, it's so sad. And the music, I was absolutely bawling my eyes out. And so was my girlfriend. They were like, it was tragic. And as someone who's literally lived with the games, grown up with the games, my girlfriend has only just started playing the games. She finished the first one there on Saturday, started playing the second one there yesterday, got to the Joel scene, then ended up watching episode 1 and 2, and she has absolutely bawled her eyes out at every time she's seen the Joel scene. So it really just show how much of a grip this show and story has on people who have grown up with the game since it came out, or people who are just experiencing the game as they come out, or even as they gotten into the show. So for me, I think this episode of season 2 is the one to be beaten, and I don't think it's going to be an episode in here that's going to be better than this one. So episode 3 has a lot of pressure on it. I mean, I think it's going to be excellent, because they just revealed this teaser of Gabriel Luna, and the caption just reads, Tommy meets Joel, or Tommy finds his brother, that sort of thing. That's the caption. That episode's also going to be heartbreaking, because they've changed it from the game. I think we're going to begin to see the dark side of Tommy, which I'm so intrigued to see. They better give us the dark side of Tommy. We didn't get it in the game. If there's anything HBO can do, even if it's in season 3, I want one episode at least just Tommy on his own. I want that, please. That's what I wanted the third game to be. is Tommy's experience during the season 2 or the part 2. I want that to be the next game, or I want at least a whole episode with Tommy. But let me know what you thought of The Last of Us Season 2 so far. I think it's excellent. I'm almost convinced it's going to be better than Season 1, and that's going to be hard to beat because I personally prefer the first game to the second. So when it comes to Season 1, is it going to be better than Season 2? I honestly don't think it's going to be as good as Season 2, because I think Season 2, even just with Episode 2 alone, it's better than the whole of Season 1. But that's my own opinion. Let me know what you've thought of Episode 1 and 2 in the comments below, because I have been absolutely traumatized yet again by The Last of Us. But thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy, make sure to smash the like button down below. Make sure to subscribe, because I will be doing episode reviews every time they come out. So make sure to tune in every week for those episode reviews. There's obviously going to be movie reviews in between those weeks as well. But thank you so much for watching. I will check you in the next one. And of course, stay safe. Make sure to subscribe if you like anything to do with movies. And I'll see you in the next video. Peace.